The Amazing Spider-Man video game, Spider-Man PS4, as Kevin is so festively showing off his Spider-Man stuff. Spider-Man 64, not Spider-Man 64. Spider-Man PS4 has been amazing, and we wanted to kind of have a real quick video where we talk about the ending. There's specifically the things that are game-changing and story-changing that are very impactful with this game, and we want to do this with a spoiler video. There's a couple things I want to talk about that I really enjoyed about the game, and I think that they've done very well. And in changing the narrative, Mary Jane is a reporter for the Daily Bugle, which I thought was really cool. And the director of the game was talking about how they wanted it to be more of a partnership between the two of them, which I completely see. When you see the two of them together, when they interact, you can tell it's more of a partnership. They're more on a level playing field.
Well, particularly in the Grand Central mission. Because I mean, this is what all stealth missions should be from now on. Just video games devs take note. Is like, when you give me a stealth mission, let me point at people and have Spider-Man zip them away. That is a great way to do a mission.
It was amazing, amazing, and you being able to stay, like you said, stealthed.
Yeah.
Spider-Man does the thing, and you're still able to push the story through and make it challenging and fun and interesting, and not an easy button, but a little easier. I think it was really cool. I also liked Spider-Man's stealth, which was totally stealing from the previous Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, which stole it from Arkham, which is the idea of attacking and stealthily grabbing people, except instead of doing it with a grappling hook, you're doing it with web shooters, which I thought was great. I think that it steals what it needs to steal well, and it innovates in different ways. But when it comes to the story specifically, we had, and again, we're talking about spoilers here, so we're going to spoil the ending of the game. There's some really interesting things that happen.
Let's go ahead and start at the beginning. Like, one of my favorite things about this is, like, the very first mission where you take down Fisk feels like the finale of a previous game that doesn't actually exist.
It really does.
Like, because he's been Spider-Man, he's established, like, all this stuff. You've got the standard Spider-Man things where he's looking, Bill's still late, and like he's got this work, and so like it feels like from the very beginning, it feels like something that is part of a bigger world.
It's an origin story, which I really enjoyed, that they didn't have to retell the origin story. They didn't have to retell the death of Uncle Ben. But I agree. It shows how long he's been in this world. He's been, Fisk is irritated about how long and how many times Spider-Man's thwarted him. It shows very easily how long this has been going on, and it's, I think he's been Spider-Man for 8 years, I think is what they said, 7 years, something like that.
8 years.
Which is enough time to build that arsenal of adversaries, if you will, that are coming against him, which makes it really great for him to have banter with people like Shocker and others, because he's had that relationship.
And you were talking about the ending, and this is where we go into that part. Like, the game has its own arc, but then once you get to the end, it feels like obviously there's going to be more, because it's setting things up, and it's like, when you came in, it feels like a world that had existed. When you finish the game, it's a world that will continue, and I really appreciated that.
The world continues. It's a living, breathing world, so it continues. And just like Batman villains or Spider-Man villains, you lock them up, doesn't mean that's the end of them.
And he has plenty more to fight.
There's so many more villains to fight. The DLC that is coming out, I want to preface that by saying the DLC that's coming out is going to have Black Cat in it. They haven't talked much more about that, though. But it's a 3-part DLC that's coming out all within this year. Which I think is it's a cool way. As they said, we wanted people to continue enjoying the game. So I'm really glad that they added that on. I know I will say that this game is so massive and there's so much to do, that this could have been you could argue that this was story that was cut from the game to then be added later, but at the same time, narrative wise, I don't agree. I think that this is very separate. I think that this is probably DLC that they made sure to time very close to the game. I'm not saying that it's a great practice, but the game itself is self-contained. It works really well. The DLC is going to continue some story.
Well, you mentioned earlier, the director's been going around talking about this game, talking about their development and how they went about this game. And he said that, you know, when they first got the go ahead for this game, he was like, "Oh, I want all these villains in here." But he said that a lot of them don't fit narratively, and like they have this arc, and the people who are in there work. And Black Cat, I think, is going to be a very different feel than the main game, because like, and so I appreciate that I think, okay, when we're recording this, the DLC has not come out.
Yes.
And so I think and hope that the DLC chapters, while story driven, will have a different feel narratively than the main story arc did.
And in journalistic integrity, whatever you want to call it, like to be completely forthcoming, like I've not completed the game. The ending of the game was spoiled for me. Multiple other pieces were spoiled for me, and as soon as that happened, I started looking into and watched the ending pieces and the after credits stuff, because because it was spoiled for me. And I also wanted to make sure we could talk about this as soon as possible for that. So I just want to be forthcoming with that. That being said, there are villains that are not in this game. There are villains that are in this game, specifically for narrative reasons. Yeah. Some of them because they're saving them for later. And I'm completely fine with that, because there are villains that are very prominent in this game that should be prominent, and there are others that you have a Spider-Man 3 issue, a problem if you had too many villains in this game. It's either too cookie cutter, where it's like, oh, this mission has Mysterio, oh, this mission has Kraven, oh, this mission. It's either really self-contained, like some of the previous Spider-Man games have been, or if you have too many big villains, they're gonna compete with each other for narrative. So the end of the game, your main villain that you're fighting is Doc Ock, which I think was a great choice, great story wise in his arc, and his competition with Norman Osborn. I thought it was a really great arc for Octavius, because he's one of my favorite Spider-Man villains for a lot of reasons, and also pairing him up where Peter's working with him. Post-college, as opposed to Doc Connors, who he's usually working with. I thought that was kind of cool to see him not paired with Connors.
Well, I think that Doc Ock's transformation, if you will, is very different than Connors to the Lizard, which is very similar to Spidey's.
Yes, I would completely agree. It's a different way of coping with what's happened to you.
Yeah.
One is intentionally going down a path, and one is accidental bitten by a spider. But I would agree. But the ending of the game, kills off. Again, we're spoiler show. Kills off Aunt May, and it did so in a very impactful way, very Star Trek way, where Peter could save her immediately.
But at the expense
of everybody else who's affected by the disease. I thought that was really amazing and touching for him, and you see the bond of these two is just so amazing, and they're very, they're close to each other, obviously, because this is like last living relative that he's that close to, or an immediate living relative, if you will. But I thought that it was a bold choice in doing that, but at the same time, we're talking about a grown-up Spider-Man here, where he needs to grow, he needs to be an adult. And in doing that severs his tie to his childhood. And I thought it was really well done, really interesting. That was the end of the narrative of the game, and then you have, well, I can't remember if there's one more bit before the post credits was Miles. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I am excited about that. Like the whole mentor mentee, because like in some ways Otto is kind of mentoring Peter, and he's like, let's do this together and stuff. And you know, obviously, when somebody gets spider powers, then it's time. And I also appreciated that they didn't bring him in from another dimension. He's someone who's been following Spider-Man, who's been a fan of Spider-Man for all this time, and you know, this moment for him is it made me really excited for him and for Peter, who, you know, you talked about the severing of his familial ties, but at the same time, there is an element of connection, kind of like with the Bat family. You know, it's like, you know, we have this in common where we are sacrificing ourselves for the greater good.
Yeah, I agree. And unfortunately, I saw all kinds of things online. I think I talked to you about this in a Polo video message that I sent to you earlier this week. But I've seen all kinds of things online saying that means you're going to play Miles in DLC. That means you'll be able to play Miles throughout the entire game, but you're going to play as Miles. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like, so people just speculating and pretending that they know what's going to happen. I will say with this bit of information, this could carry on to DLC, but I don't know if they're going to continue that narrative with this game. But it definitely leads up to say, hey, you could have this happen. So the next game may have, it may be similar to Spider-Man and Mary Jane in this game, where you have a little bit of Spider-Man, you have a little bit of Miles. I would say more Miles than Mary Jane was in this game. Where maybe 2/3 of the game you're playing as Spider-Man, and then you got this, like, you know, small section where you're playing as Miles, and the smaller section where you're playing as Mary Jane. I think it'd be really cool.
I think it would also be cool because, like, one of the things that like the beginning of Metroid games, they have to take everything away from you so that they can give it all back. So what if you start as Miles training under Spidey?
That could be really cool. I think that'd be fun. I think it'd be a really fun way to give a tutorial for the next Spider-Man game, because the tutorial for this Spider-Man game, you had the very beginning piece, and then you had some other parts which I thought was artfully giving you a tutorial of this. These are the towers. These are the backpacks, and being able to give me a tutorial without making me feel like I was in a tutorial, I thought was really cool. And you could do that again with Miles. I agree. That leads up to the post-credits scene, which in the game you hear about Harry, but you don't. They talk about him being off on a trip, and Peter hasn't seen him in a long time. And the last scene you see that Norman Osborn talking to Harry, who's suspended in a medical back-to-tank kind of situation.
But green back-to-tank.
Green back-to-tank. So immediately I'm thinking Goblin. Because, I'm like waiting for this to happen. And Norman's promising, he's like, I'm gonna find a cure, and he puts his hand up against the glass, and you see a black substance like snake smokily up to his hand.
Yeah.
And at that moment I literally blurted out, "Oh shit." Like, because we have a retelling of, it has to be, they're going Venom with that. Yeah. I mean, it has to be. And to do Venom right, and again, this is coming out before the Venom movie comes out too.
Yeah.
To do Venom right, you have to have that bond with Parker. You have to have that mutual hatred of a person.
Yeah.
If they're going to retell it with Harry, where you have, maybe there's jealousy involved, similar to Spider-Man. Again, I hate bringing up Spider-Man 2, Raimi Spider-Man 2, and Spider-Man 3. You have the friendship, but you have jealousy involved. You have competition. I don't know what they're going to bring in regards to that, as to why there is that animosity. But that bond, that connection has to be there for Venom to work. Venom's character is an anti-Spider-Man. He was written to be the antithesis.
Yeah.
And I think it's just weird having him just sucked up and put in his own movie without Spider-Man. So I'll be talking about that, when that movie comes out and everything. But How do you feel about Harry being Venom?
I think it'll be interesting. I appreciated because like at the beginning of the game, you I mean, I know what those arms are. I know what this becomes. But at the same time, there was also, but wait, is that the direction we're going?
Yeah.
And like when you first see the black dot on Miles's hand, and it's like, is that where is he going to be Venom? And like there's a lot of ways that they could take this, and in a very similar vein, again, Arkham just set a really high bar for superhero video games, and it is a compliment.
Yeah.
But when you saw the character arcs in that and the differences in the character, they're doing, Insomniac is doing their own take on these, and I really appreciated that. And so I'm not sure where it's going, but I'm going to continue on this journey with them because they have given me a lot of fun these past couple or this past. Holy cow! That game's only been out 10 days.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's been an amazing ride, pun intended. But like you said, Arkham, also Telltale, in being able to freely tell a story with these characters, changing up some origin, changing up some relationships.
It also makes it really fresher. I think it also makes it more interesting for those of us who are very familiar with these characters to be like, okay, well, let's see what this looks like. Yeah. And like you said, when we skip Spider-Man's origin story at the beginning, it's like, yeah, everybody knows that, but we also, a lot of us, already know a lot about these characters, and so being able to see these somewhat new, somewhat familiar stories is a lot of fun.
I would agree. I think that very quick tangent, a similar thing we were talking about, having that freedom to be able to retell stories and everything. It's one of the reasons our friend John was we're doing a Star Wars RPG like a long time ago. We were in a galaxy far, far away. We were playing a Star Wars tabletop RPG, and he voiced concern with me and frustration with me, where he was like, I have a hard time telling what the story that I want to tell because I'm in the Star Wars universe, and I have these rules and these things that happen and these things that I don't want to shake up. And I feel like that the creators of Spider-Man PS4 were given that freedom to just say, just do it, just do whatever you want. And they did it lovingly. And I will say, in closing off on this, because I think we can continue talking about how wonderful and much love the Spider-Man game, but I will say, closing off on this, the thing that I like is if Harry becomes Venom, and that's the take that they want to take on it, they can. That doesn't mean that Harry's going to stay Venom. Yeah. That doesn't mean that it changes the origin of where the symbiote came from, which they just changed in the comics, by the way. Where it originally came from.
So is it still an alien?
It's still an alien, but it was created by a Celestial. It's created to be an ultimate weapon by a Celestial. I'm completely like glazing over lots of details there, but it's no longer like, oh, it's this entity and this hive mind of xenomorphs, right? Where you have this hive mind super weapon. It's like, no, this was literally created. Maybe they stole that idea from Prometheus. Anyways, let me know in the comments what you think about that. What you think about the new Venom origin, and what you think about Harry being Venom, and if you think that's what they're going to do with it, or if you think they're just completely trolling us. See you later.
Bye.
Thanks for watching This Week in Our Collective Heads. Subscribe over here and click the bell, and that way you'll know about any new videos that we put up, because we put up a lot of gameplay, a lot of stories from games and stuff like that, and gameplay is down here.
Yeah, and you got more editorials and news stuff down here. Check it out.